So sorry, do the live start that. Oh, there she is. Great. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first Parliament session of the year. It's really exciting to see so many people here. I hope you guys like this kind of layout. It's a bit different to what we do usually. It's, I think, more engaging and in a way makes you feel more comfortable and just allows you to actually have discussions in a better way. Now, we'll move on to introductions in a minute, but there's no apologies currently, so we're all good to go. I'm going to pass it over to Dan quickly to explain the structure of how this Parliament meetings are run. And I hope you all have seen the agenda. We'll go through it point by point. Okay, I'll pass it to Dan.
So yeah, welcome to Kent Union Parliament. Firstly, congratulations on being elected, and thank you a lot for coming along tonight as well. I appreciate that you're probably busy with your studies, so really do appreciate you coming along. In terms of what Kent Union Parliament is, I know I've been through this with some of you already. It's the highest student-led decision-making body, and it decides our policy, our bylaws, and kind of is a forum for basically discussing student issues. It meets at least 6 times per year, so we've got 2 meetings this term, and we've got more next term. There may be a need to kind of meet more often than that, depending on what comes up. But yeah, it's our Parliament. If you've all seen the agenda, we've got quite a packed agenda. We've got a vote on a policy proposal. And then we've got basically a discussion on a number of issues. So we're going to go, that's the first part of the year, we're going to go simple introduction. So, like I said, I'll start with myself. I'm Daniel, I'm the Children Voice Coordinator. I help oversee Kent Union Parliament, among other things. And yeah, this is my first Parliament session that I'm overseeing, and we'll try to do something different, and I hope you really appreciate it. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, Dan. So we'll move on to introductions. Now, my name is Zed. I'm Student Union President for Kent Union this year. And last year I was actually the Activities Network Chair, so I sat on Parliament as well. So you will have. So I'll be chairing today's session, but from this point onwards, we have Alexia, who will be our chair. Since you want to introduce yourself? You can if you want me to come forward. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, don't feel free like you ever have to use that. You can, yeah, it's there.
Yeah, so you kind of introduced me. My name's Alexius. Personal information. I'm a 3rd year student at Kent studying international business. I also belong to the committee of the basketball team here at Kent. I'm the vice president, and recently been accepted as the chair for the Parliament meeting. So I'm very excited to work with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now I'll move on to everyone to introduce themselves as well. So if we start on this side, you want to start?
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm Secretary Assistant for the Postgraduate Network. I'm a master's student studying modern history, and I am also chief of lobby for Respect the Marriage.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Luis. I'm the chair of the Academic Network. I'm also the vice president of the British Sign Language Society. And I'm a research student.
We'll have to stop talking. We have a very fast agenda.
So I'm Ben. I'm the Vice President of Postgraduate Experience for this year. This is my first Parliament too, actually.
Hello everyone, Tom Hunt, Vice President of Nice to meet you. See you today.
I'm Carolina, I'm Vice President for Student Engagement. So in my role, I look after all of our sports clubs and societies. I'm pretty sure all of you guys know, but just to reiterate, we are like paid staff as well, not students anymore. So yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Lupe. I'm Vice President Academic Experience. So my role is everything, obviously, and I support student reps. I oversee the academic strategy for the union, and this is my 2nd year in Parliament. So we've done quite a few of these already. last year. It was pretty full of a lot of strike kind of guided discussions. Hopefully this year we're going to be able to have some very different conversations here, and I'm really excited to work with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Murli. I'm the postgraduate network chair. I'm a current student at the School of International Relations. Yeah, on my second term. Actually, it's my first time and looking forward to interacting with you.
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm the undergrad network chair, and I'm studying economics in my second year. I'm also part of the Economic Society. Glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Miguel. I am the postgrad open position. I am doing my research studies in English. I was in the parliament, I guess, or the equivalent of parliament was 4 years ago when I was a student here as an undergrad as the environment officer.
I'm Yaz. I'm the LGBT network chair, and I'm third year film undergrad. This is also my first time in parliament, so.
Hi, I'm James. I'm the network chair for the STEM Listener Network this year. And even though I went to a parliament meeting a couple of years ago, it's actually my first in person.
Hi, I'm Nicholas, and I'm the chair of International.
Hi, I'm Noor. I'm studying law and politics in my first year. And I'm also a student ambassador in. I'm the chair of the group. Hi, I'm Ledu. I'm in the undergraduate open position. I'm the president of Belton and SOC, and this is my first parliament.
Yes.
Yeah, can I just ask, are you guys all observing today, or any of you also in network?
Yeah.
Amazing. Happy to have you here.
We'll have to be someone online as well. If you introduce yourself. Maybe not. Yeah. So let's move on to the agenda that we have today. So thank you so much for being here. Now we have the first policy, item number 3, which is elimination of food waste policy proposal. I hope you guys have had a read of it. Just giving you some background on this, and it was proposed through our Change It platform. So it was a petition by a student, seconded by me. Now it basically describes how the cost of living crisis has worsened in the past year, and food inflation has been massive at about 15%. So food prices are going up, and there are a lot of outlets on campus that have a lot of food wastage. Now, food surplus apps and only Too Good To Go are something that we are pushing for as a union. That's why this has been kind of fast tracked into Parliament. And the policy above basically follows that if it passed with a 2/3 majority, Kent Union will ensure that all its food and retail outlets use surplus food sharing app to dispose of food waste after each working day. And Nottingham University runs food and retail outlets to also use a surplus food sharing app and commit its outlets to take further steps to reduce their food waste levels. And now I'd love to hear you guys' views on it and the thoughts. So anything you raise your hand if you want to speak. Yeah, Jim, do you want to come up to the left and speak?
Seems like a fairly sensible proposal, really. It seems like a easy thing to implement. And to be honest, I'm surprised it's not been implemented before. Anything.
So yeah, I just want to say, yeah, I love this because I was for Royal James before so many years ago. There's one thing I was campaigning for, this food waste policy. I think I love it. I think I just would also like a food waste policy from the union as well, because I think that's not clear where food waste goes. I don't know where food from co-op goes, for instance, and where that goes. I know, for instance, that with 6 outlets on campus, it goes to an anaerobic digestive factory where it becomes biogas. But as that mentioned, that's all the way in Essex. So it's still quite a long way, and there's a lot of carbon emissions. So I think having something there on campus for students to actually use would be fantastic. And I know that other universities do use it. And in fact, I know that some don't even need to use OLEO apps because based on my experience working with catering and hospitality, they're very lovely, but it's a bit hard to get things moving from my experience. So my only concern with this proposal would just be that it might take a while for it to get running, because I'm thinking that's good in the long term, but in the short term, I'm thinking of a way we can do it at a faster level. And one proposal I have is literally just having a food Tupperware kind of situation where outlets are closed on Fridays. So let's think of Mungo's, Dolce Vita, or Citizen Cafe. Over the weekend, that food probably goes to waste. So I think on Fridays, there's a really good opportunity for students to like just bring Tupperware around campus and just go there, don't have extra food. Yeah, don't know if that works.
Just to update you guys on this as well. So there's a lot of work that I've been working alongside with Tom on our cost of living parity. So we've actually got the university, blogging the university, to trial Too Good to Go at the Gulbenkian, starting from mid-November. And we will also be doing it in part with them with our co-op stores. So this is already in like motion, basically, through our work. But this policy basically kind of sets it in, states that we will continue to work on this. And it's not just something that, you know, this opposite team is focused on, it's something that we will continue to lobby the university and continue to make sure that our outlets are working on it as well. So the co-op does have a lot of food waste, so that's where the Too Good to Go scheme really works and helps the cost of living crisis, also have sustainability targets, which is really important. And with the co-op stores, anything that can't be sold in Too Good to Go and is more kind of non-perishable items would be donated to campus pantry, so it helps students in that way as well. In terms of the Gulbenkian, that's where they're trialing it, but hopefully the trial goes well, and then from that it'll expand to the other outlets. We are continuously lobbying the hospitality team at the university, so fingers crossed, we continue to push forward.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but they actually, it's not the first time they're trialing it in Gulbenkian. So do we know why they stopped it?
Yeah, so they trialed it back in 2018.
Yeah.
And they stopped it because the demand was too high to feed into the supply that they had actually. So people were actually really using it, and then they stopped it because it became financially not viable anymore for them, which was really strange. So when we discussed this with Keith, he came in after Keith is the basically the director of hospitality. When he came in, he no longer like knew why it was stopped, so he'd been thinking about it. So they already have an account. That's why when we lobbied them and we told them like this is what we want to do, they were actually quite open to the idea because they had already tried it. We will be hopefully getting a commitment from them that they will continue to have running rather than just turn it on when it comes financially not viable for them.
I think to add, I think it's probably before COVID and they probably stopped it and then they brought it back. So perhaps we just
during COVID it didn't probably work well. Is there any other?
Do we know what the financial cost is associated with it?
Yeah, no, we're still costing it out. In terms of the co-op itself, we actually don't have that many costs related to it because the app is free to download. It's the food that we use, so we already waste our food with co-op, you know. So if it's being used for that, we're actually going to be able to make it financially viable for us. It's a university that's a bit different because they have different policies in place where they're like food wasted policies and like the sustainability targets. That kind of is where it weighs out. So when it comes to the actual food wastage from the Gulbenkian, they actually save that for Too Good to Go at the end of the day, so they're not able to sell it at full price. You know what I mean?
But so there's no cost associated with making an account
No.
on Good to Go.
It's free. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good.
My only thing, because I've worked in hospitality, I've worked with Too Good to Go before, and it has been good, but it is like you say, you kind of save certain things that you know are going out of date. So one thing with the Gulbenkian why they may have stopped it, because I'm not really sure of that. It could just be that they didn't have a good system in place for the rotation of food, because a lot of the time when I was working with it, it was like, well, we would try to choose the least profitable things to keep going. That opens a whole new things about like dietary requirements and allergens as well. But I mean, if the food is going to waste anyway, if it was just food like at the end of the day, like clearance rather than saving, instead of using Too Good to Go, could we not create our own scheme perhaps? Or we just like give the food away rather than try to sell it? Because realistically, no one's losing anything from just giving it away. And the other point I just wanted to ask was with Too Good to Go as well. It's the people who are like just able to get on the app. which obviously is everyone, but whoever would do that. Whereas if it was more through Kent Union, then perhaps it would be more based upon who is most affected by the cost of living, because that is quite disproportionate even on our campus.
Yeah, just on that point around creating our own system or even soft launching it and doing it ourselves, I think that's quite tricky, and we've seen there's a lot of examples from across the university that when you create your own system as opposed to getting something off the shelf that's already ready to go and ready to be used, things start to get messed up when you try to implement a new system and you don't know exactly what kind of impact it might have or how exactly it's going to work. Like you might miss certain aspects that you should have taken into consideration. That's why taking something off the shelf is usually a lot more, well, in this case, it's not really financially helpful because it's free anyway, but in terms of systems and in terms of operationally, it's just a lot simpler to do that way.
Will too good to go those bags then? Will they be reduced cost or will they be free?
There will be the £3 magic bag. So that would be good to know. So the £3 magic bag, which has basically the financial value of 10 to 15 pounds.
Yeah.
It kind of works in that way. So you still have to pay for it, but it does help in making sure that you are able to basically have a full meal for like 1 or 2 days with just that £3 magic bag.
Well, sometimes it might be even cheaper as well. I've seen some we don't have a great campus, but you know, we do have an Nero, for example, and like people do like bags of breaks for like £1.50 and you know, £10 worth of food. I think that's pretty beautiful.
So this policy will basically give us the mandate to kind of go in and really lobby the university. Be like, oh, this is what policy was passed in Parliament. This is what we're trying to do. Just to correct myself as well very quickly, I mentioned staff members' name in the university. You should not mention staff names, just to roll it back. And then Luis.
Just another concern, because I work at Dolce Vita now as a supervisor. We've only got a concern of only certain days that we're wasting food, so we couldn't always accommodate at all outlets. So Fridays are actually our least wastage day, not our worst. It's actually Mondays that are the worst wastage day because no one turns up in the morning. So we've got to consider that we know when our wastage is highest and lowest. We've got numbers to predict for the bread, for bed and bistro students to consider, bed and flex, and also paying customers. And we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we have to consider different types of wastage. We can't always accommodate for everyone. And we've even extended our breakfast and dinner times now to 15 minutes after service to make sure the food is gone. So we've even reduced our prices down for dinner. So instead of paying like £10, which was the normal price, everyone's being charged £6.
Thank you for that. I think it depends massively on like relaying that with outlet managers specifically and making sure that they can go on the app and put it in the days that they are able to actually provide those magic bags rather than keep them all at all times, you know. Because I think that's what most people do on the app as well. Most shops that they will have it on certain days and some days they're just like closed because they don't have any usage. So we'd have to look into that. But overall, as policy, are we all content in passing this? Do we do a raise of hands, perhaps?
You'd have to be a
That would be soon. I was just wondering, we've checked that we have a system that will work. We have no financial implication. I was just wondering if we need volunteers to support in terms of getting the packages ready and all those things. How's that going to work?
Yeah, I was just wondering, actually related to that, would this be sort of run through like a branch of the community pantry? Would the volunteers from the community pantry be working as this kind of thing, or would it be its own separate?
It would be a separate thing. So it wouldn't be run through the campus pantry. It would be dependent on each outlet itself and its staff. So as the staff do the wastage within the outlets, they will be able to then pack the bags and then give out the bags. We'll have certain timing and all of that. But all the details of this will be worked out by the outlet managers. So they'll be able to actually make sure that's implemented correctly.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. So if you are in support of this policy, of Boston policy, you can raise your hand. Boston?
So it would only be for Parliament members, so like CFC, as you're the chair, but great to know that you support. But I think that's a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll record that.
First one you want, guys. Thank you so much for raising something on that. Now, moving on to agenda item 4, which is the discussion on impending UCU industrial action. If I can call you on Lupe and Ben, can we speak around this?
I was just looking at I thought I'd save,
Oh, and there is a guillotine on this item of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's going to be relatively short. There, just to state out the facts, basically, because there haven't been any decisions or any concrete kind of plans made just yet. So hopefully, for the next section of Parliament on the 22nd, we'll be able to come with some more information and hopefully some student views as well on the issues. But you guys might be aware that UCU acted nationally this time around around industrial action, and they are doing it on very similar issues that they did last year. So one of them is the issue of pensions. The other one are the full rights, which are related to working conditions, equal pay, and all those sort of things. This year they did it nationally. Last year what they did was each branch, so each university, each area of UCU made a vote, and then the ones that didn't pass the threshold, which is 50%, or didn't vote for industrial action, didn't have any action. So last year, industrial action across the country was very localized. This time around, it was a national vote. So everyone across the country voted, and they voted to take industrial action. So they now have a mandate that lasts 6 months for them to take any type of industrial action that they want to take. And this is across the country. So any university might be facing industrial action this year. This could be in a variety of different ways. Last year we saw a mixture of them. So we saw strikes, which is, missed teaching. And then we also saw other things around action short of strike. And that is things like materials not being uploaded on Moodle or being deleted from Moodle. It also could be the assessment and marking boycott, which I know most of us will have heard about and how much it impacted students. So that is also industrial action. That's also something that UCU could do this year. I probably should have said this at the start, but UCU is a universities and college union, and they represent all staff at universities and colleges, both academics, but also professional services. So student experience teams or anyone that works in student admin might also be taking part in industrial action. So UCU met today to kind of discuss what kind of action they're going to take. Obviously, there's branches of UCU, and there's different kind of tiers and levels at which they make decisions. We don't know the outcomes of it yet. The kind of information that we are expecting to kind of be confirmed is a few days of action of strikes this side of Christmas. So potentially around the end of November, start of December, and then we're expecting the majority of action to be taken next term around February times, because that's just way more impactful. Once you get towards the end of the year, people are a bit more stressed, it's a bit more workload, especially with assessments, with exams. So that's probably when they're going to have the most impact, and therefore when we expect them to be taking most of the action anyway. We met with the president of the Kent branch of UCU last week, as well as the representative AIMS as well. And we just kind of discussed what they knew already, which, like I said, is not much, because the decisions are being made at a high level at UCU, and then they will be trickled down to the different branches, and then branches will decide what kind of action to take. That's as much as we know from them. Some of you that were members of Parliament last year might know that we renewed the policy last year in terms of how we decide our stance as a students' union around whether we support industrial action or not. That policy basically states that we need to do 3 things. We need to be consulting with students, educating students, and kind of providing them with all the information that we can. So as a students' union, we aim to be the one true source of information around this, because last year there was a lot of misinformation going around and people were getting really concerned. So we really strive to establish ourselves like the one true point of information for students when they have any queries around industrial action. And the second thing that we want to do is strike forums. So you might have heard of them or attended them last year. These are just platforms and kind of forums that we provide as a students' union to bring together the three parties involved in this. So we invite students, of course, to come and ask any questions to get the kind of the queries out of the way. But we also invite members from the university. So it might be members from the HR department, or it might be deputy vice chancellors. And they will come to the meeting, as well as UCU representatives. So basically, we're getting both sides of the coin in the same room to have a discussion, to kind of present the facts from their perspectives. And students are able to come along, ask any questions, kind of get the queries resolved. And then the third aspect of the policy is that we then bring all that consultation that we did with students, we bring all the information that we got from the forums, we bring them to Parliament, we present that to all members of Parliament, we have a discussion, and then we decide as a collective whether the Students' Union should support English Short Action or not. And we do that for every set of action. So if we have 2 strike days towards the end of November, we're going to have to decide whether we support those specific 2 days. It's not like the UCU mandate where it lasts for 6 months. Our support lasts for each kind of section of the action. So last year, for the first set of strikes, we took a decision. For the second set of strikes, I'm just sorry guys, I can't speak today. For the second set of strikes, we took another decision, and then finally for the assessment and marking boycott, we took a third decision as well. They don't all have to be in support. Some might be in support, some might be not in support. But what's really important is that what we are supporting is not necessarily the course. Of course, we want, great working conditions for the people that are teaching us and helping us develop as students. What we're discussing is whether we support the action itself, and kind of whether we can support as a students' union something that has a big impact on our members and the people that we represent, and basically the people that we're here to make decisions on behalf of them. That's as much as we know at the moment. The dates for the strike forums should be kind of advertised and publicised very soon. So I really encourage every single one of you to come along, or to tell people to come along. It's really hard for us to make a decision on behalf of students without students' engagement. Then it just means that we are making decisions. We're not really taking in all the views of students. So it's really important that we get as many people in there as possible. That's as much as I can say at this moment. Hopefully by the next Parliament, I'll have some more information that I can bring to you guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, just to let you know, because I work with postgraduate students and lots of student engagement, I've already had some responses to potential strike action. And let me just say, their reviews this year are really mixed. There's quite a few people that aren't happy with it, because lots of people are saying, I just want one uninterrupted year. Other people are saying it's not their fault. I understand that it's really difficult for them, but it's not fair on the students. And, so the results thus far from just students coming over and talking to me, or just asking in class in general, it's seeming to be sort of less understanding. So that could be something to definitely address when it comes to the educational aspect. But yeah, people aren't happy.
That's really, really useful. And actually, you reminded me of a very important point. That is, UCU does not only represent academics, it also represents students to a certain extent. So we have postgraduate students here that, in order to fund their studies and to fund their degrees, they work at the university as hourly paid lecturers. So they might be leading a seminar, for example. You guys might be in seminars where you have a postgraduate student teaching you. And they find themselves in a very tricky situation, so both staff and students, and we really need to consider that as well when we're making our decisions. But yeah, I think you were next.
Yeah, no, it's just literally sort of following up on that. The kind of PGR body that does have to teach are particularly they're perhaps one of the worst treated sort of staff members in that respect, because they get very underpaid. They are on 0-hour contracts, also having to do one of the kind of hardest levels of education. And in no way should that influence the decision, obviously. If when we come to vote on strike action, I can understand it's going to impact you. It's just a case of we're going to try and get some of those PGRs that are in that situation to give their perspective as well. because yeah, it's rough. As the strike action obviously impacts students a lot, but the reasons they're striking are very fair and have been sort of systemically a problem for about 5-6 years.
Wanted to quickly add to that as well. I want to make it very clear that as Kent Union, we will continue to endeavor to basically support our students from all the way from undergrads to PTRs. Like that is our purpose. We're there to make sure that they're supported and looked after, and that we can do everything in our power to make sure that they feel heard. So when you do come to making a decision on strike or industrial action in general, it would be on the basis of what you know from students and how you want to represent.
No, I just wanted to say that, well, full disclosure, I'm a member of UCU, so I'm a postgrad research student. So I'm part of UCU, I've been involved in these discussions. And yeah, I'm aware that I'm the only research student here, so I kind of have this onus of representing the research students who are, as I would like to remind you, part of the student body. So we do need to have our views heard, we need to have views kind of out there and validated. But yeah, I just wanted to say that, I think it's a really tough position for us because we are kind of in a mixed position where we kind of are a bit of staff, a bit of students. I don't teach, but I still feel like I'm a staff member in a lot of ways. So it's really tough. And I want to say that from talking to staff members, I want to reiterate, they don't want to be striking. I wouldn't want to be striking if I were a lecturer. It's hard because I would love to be teaching, but yeah, sorry, I've been another discussion, but just to say that out of the way.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll be able to have some more, and I'm conscious we have a guillotine of 20 minutes for this item. But it's going to become a more substantial item for the next meeting, but we're going to have more in-depth discussions, and we're definitely going to have to discuss some sort of for our immediate students. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, I would try to say shortly, but I think one of the problems we faced also last year is it's like a really complex problem, not just from the perspective of morality, but also about the facts. So like if we decide to do some action as a parliament, I think one of the key things would be to make the information in like really accessible way and avoid those like manipulative, like half-baked things. And in the same time, like not be biased either on the side of students or the professors, really to provide the information and also be able to provide the information like if someone approaches, not only on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as members of Parliament, you guys have a role to hold us as a students' union accountable to make sure that we are being impartial in terms of educating people, making sure that we're presenting facts, that we're not, whether we support it or not, that decision has not been made, but even after the decision is made, that we are providing facts regardless of supporting strike action or not. But yeah, it's, and especially since last year on the assessment and marking boycott, there was quite a bit of misinformation, and that informed a lot of the discussion that we had at Parliament as well. So it's really interesting as well, if you hear any information that kind of is not similar to what we're talking about here or what you see at the KU website, please do bring it up, please do let us know and flag it, because we want to make sure that, like I said, we are the one single true source of truth for students, because this is a very distressing issue for a lot of people, both for staff and for students. So we want to maintain that position of being impartial in that sense and making sure that we're putting out the right information, the complete information, and basically the full story. And that's also why we do our strike forums with all parties kind of involved, and everyone having the full opportunity to come and kind of have those discussions and present that kind of their perspective. Do you still have a point?
Yeah, I wanted to point something out for the Parliament. There's a majority of stage 2 psychology students that are very dissatisfied. And the only reason I know that is because I have a nice relationship with some of the psychology professors, and they seem to be receiving most of the feedback of the students' dissatisfaction feedback. I have a particular professor talking about I didn't check any emails last Monday because I had 260 something inquiries from students. These are unsatisfied students. So it might be that information doesn't always reach the appropriate measure. Like it would be good for students to know that when they do that, maybe they should have to reach out. So just know there's information that staff has, for example, stage heads. They have information that you might not be privy to because you're not asking for it. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's a really good point. I think it is important to highlight that if any of your, lecturers are taking industrial action, please, if you do speak to them, ask them about it. They're happy to share that information. They're happy to talk about it. As part of it, we want to make it as transparent as possible as well. So I think it would be really nice to see Parliament members actually engaging with the forums as well and getting their groups to engage with it too. So we have the widest possible student feedback on that, basically, and their opinion of that. It would be great to see you guys in the forums as well. We will be releasing that information as soon as we know when those forums are, and we'll be sending that out to you guys. So hopefully we can see you guys there too.
And just.
Do you have a point?
Me? Yeah. No, thank you.
In terms of information and communication, that's, how long do we have? That's cool. It's just one last little thing. So in terms of communications, one thing that we definitely did notice last year was that a lot of the times students are not treated like adults by the university in some ways, where information might be withheld from them or it might not be shared just yet because we don't want to distress them yet because we don't know what's happening. But I don't know how you guys feel, but as a student, I would much rather know that this has been voted on, that it might be coming, and just being able to prepare myself and being able to engage with democratic processes like strikes and in parliament and being able to kind of make my voice heard in that sense. It's really important. So this year, I'm from a Kent Union perspective, we want to start putting out this information as much as possible. We know it's probably not the most interesting topic to talk about. It's not what you want to see in your Instagram feeds, but it's really, really extremely important. So we want to make sure that we're putting out the information as early as possible. Even now that we don't know exactly what's happening, we want to let students know that this might be coming, that it might be happening. And in the same way, I've been working with the university communications team, and I met with them earlier this week to kind of urge them to put out as much information as they can now. Hopefully by the end of tomorrow, to send out something to students that this might be coming. I mean, it's information that's already out in the public. People can see this information. People can Google UCU and see that they've got a national mandate to strike this year for the next 6 months. So there is no harm in treating students like adults and telling them this might be coming. It's really important. And in terms of the forums, we are trying to make them as accessible as possible. So we're going to hold some in person during the day, and then we're going to also hold some in the evening for those students that might not be around campus or might be commuting and might not be able to make it in today, that are going to be online in Teams, really easy and accessible, just to make sure that as many people as possible have the opportunity to engage with them. Yeah, that's all from me. I don't know if anyone has any other questions, Maureen?
Not a question. How do you guys celebrate when somebody says something that is It's something that really is something I appreciate, because when we are holding meeting sessions, we forget that there are people who are moving from class to home and they are in between things. So when we have these 2 sessions for in person and people who are not, around, then it's a good thing. And I thought I should point that.
So I think that's done on that item. So I'm one last point. This time, as Luca said, it is national, so it is a national thing that all universities will be facing, whereas last year sometimes it was more localized here at Kent, certain national action. So we know that everyone across the country will be facing these industrial actions, so we should hopefully ban with it. Perfect, thank you.
Do we stick to the guillotine?
Yeah.
Nice, look at us.
No. Okay, this is so efficient. I love it. Perfect, so let's move on to the next item, which is a discussion on Ottenham's module cuts. Nicholas, I can call you up. Speak on this. Speak on, is it Nicholas? I don't know. Bear with me.
Yeah, midway.
Let's see. No, I'm sorry. You know what? This is evidence. I don't know Nicholas. It's Nicholas.
Well, I have a presentation as well.
And that's all of you. Oh, and then the difficulty of this is 5 minutes as well. Yes, for 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Yes, no, hi, I'm Gal, I'm the research postgrad in School of English, Cool Farm, postgraduate open, so as a, because I'm kind of a research student, I've been involved in these discussions already, and I'm aware there is an upcoming restructure or these discussions about it in the art and humanities, which will affect modules and courses.
Don't we love a bit of the technical issues? Yeah, not of course I don't. Right. I'll just exit that. Yeah, try and just work out to get the PowerPoint on the screen. Thank you, Zed.
Tell me whether we have it.
Yeah, talk so much about yourself, please.
I think I'm sharing the screen. Yeah,
You just can press that if you want.
So thank you to our wonderful president for helping me out there.
I'm no tech expert, I promise you. That was the PowerPoint.
So yeah, the key point I just want to make is like, this is the context of it, which is that we shouldn't be cutting modules and degree programs. And from what I understand, the Uni Executive Group are planning to cut modules and degree programs to save money. What a shock, especially targeting the Arts and Humanities division. And while it is targeting the Arts and Humanities, what's to stop this from happening with other divisions across the university? And you might ask, okay, but this doesn't directly affect me. Well, it doesn't directly affect me either, but I just know that simply put, this is not the right thing to happen to students. It's really unfair, and this is absolutely not fair for any students, any upcoming students or any current students. And this is the latest and most recent restructure in the Arts and Humanities in a few years. The last restructure was just when I was a student back in 2018. And so I feel like we're constantly under attack, and we need to stand up for students and be aware of these issues because these are things concerning us. And just the last point, which is that I think there's a dangerous rhetoric occurring right now in the world and in the UK about how arts and humanities are kind of constantly devalued and saying, like, oh, you should do something else, you know, another course, another degree, and law in something else. And I'm not trying to devalue that as well because everything has its own merits, right? Fantastic. So what's going to happen? So from my understanding, modules are going to have higher quota of students needed to sign up, and I don't really have an exact, sorry, walking away, don't really have an exact figure of like what the quota is going to be, because I think this is going to vary from school to school. There's stuff going on about that, but otherwise the modules are going to be cut. And I think this is really fair in the Arts and Humanities because especially in this division, we specialize and we need to specialize in specific areas, especially the further you go on in your academic career. And I think it's really important to have a diversity of modules because I'm in seminar with first year students and I talk to them and they love that there's a diversity of modules. That's why they come here to Kent. Talk to postgrads, that's the same reason they come to Kent because there's that diversity. And, you know, just to showcase that, like in my first year, it was like 20 students in the module. Second year, it became 17, third year, 14, and then in my postgrad, it became just 4. So it really becomes more and more niche the further you go on. So I think it's really important, especially for third year modules, for postgrad modules, because again, as I said, diversity and variety is really important to students. But I also think this is really important, especially for the first year cohort, first year students who are the current cohort here at Kent, because they probably come to Kent for that diversity of modules. And to see that probably getting cancelled when they get into the third year is going to be, I think, really unfair. So from my understanding as well, the university just wants to streamline the courses and the modules and the arts and humanities to make it more generic and make it more, streamlined, essentially. And sorry.
Next one, yeah.
So what does this mean for students? It essentially means that the modules you sign up for can get cancelled at any time, that your whole degree program could shut just like what happened 4 years ago at Medway with School of Music, I believe it's shut down. And it really stresses out students and should not be the case. Obviously, it also means because it's a bit more generic, there could be staff cuts, so it means you might not be taught any more by specialists in fields you want to be specialising in. There might not be anyone left to do to supervise the dissertation. I know when I was undergrad here, I was in School of Arts, actually, and there was 24 staff members in drama. And I come back here, like, how many years later? 4 years later, and it's so sad to see that number drop from 24 to 12. So to see that, like, I couldn't do my dissertation that I did in undergrad because the lecturers I had then were gone. But I also think this is something about the research culture of Kent, and who's less diverse, it becomes more, you reach out less perspectives, essentially. And in terms of how this affects students, but I think we have to think about the employability and we have to think about postgraduate options. This severely limits both of those things for students because it doesn't really make any students stand out. You become more generic. If your program is streamlined, you don't really have any, anything that makes you stand out from other students. And the most important point, like, you're paying money for an education, which, my goodness, unfair period. But the point is that you should not be treated this way when spending anything on education. And what's the justification for this? Well, I have actually looked at the financial statements from the university. It's published. You can find it on the Kent website. And honestly, there is no financial justification for putting courses and modules in the arts and humanities. The university has broken even this year, and its most recent saving targets, it's highly profitable, financially secure, including, I didn't put a figure there because I didn't know how many millions exactly, got mixed numbers, but I know they spent quite a big number on Kent Edition, which we've been complaining about, I've complained about. There's been timetabling issues, there's been supervision issues, there's been international student issues, which are just like getting your attendance there. £4 million of tennis courts, which is frankly ridiculous. £2 million a year with the 12 members of the executive group who, in my opinion, mismanage the university. And all of this amidst this cost of living crisis, which greatly affects students, and a global pandemic has literally just halted and changed our lives. So yeah, that's essentially what I just want to end it with this kind of note, which is that, like, the university does want to spend our tuition fees and our income on buildings rather than education. And I want to end with this idea that, we are students, we are the researchers, we are the university. I know it sounds like some patriotic dogma, but no, I believe it really can create change if we believe truly that we can create something and do something. Sorry, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I just, like, have you finished or?
Yeah, done.
Yeah, like, understand your frustration, and I agree that if someone is in second year and came to the university with certain expectations, and in the third year is not able to get the education it gets, you might call it like unfair, and I would agree with that. But I'm afraid you also need to see the other side of the problem, which is like the financial thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether you can really use the argument with like the surplus of the financial year. There's not really cause relationship between those two things.
Sorry, go on.
Like, fair enough, like £4 million is a lot, but it's like a long-term asset. You cannot really compare it to the cost of the course. And if you're saying that there's just like 4 students in the course, it just might not be financially viable to do it. And like, fair enough, there's like few millions that the university makes. Those millions won't go to the shareholders, it will go back to the university. And if the university would be spending, just to be fair, it would bankrupt. So I think we're kind of missing the arguments from the university to really make, the judgment. But as I said, I understand the frustration. I agree that it's unfair, but sometimes,
No, yes, I think so. But I completely agree because I do understand that. I'm sorry, very fast, but I do understand that. Yeah, the university is a business. I'm not saying it's not because let's be honest, it is. And I do, I'm not saying like if like only 2 students sign up, oh, it should run. This is not financially stable. But yeah, fair points, and I agree with you to like, work it out and more. Question.
I think it was okay, the room.
Mine's a similar additional onto what you were saying, with the kind of destruction of perhaps the research culture of the university. Whilst I can understand, we can more about accessibility. Coding the arts and hubs is particularly interesting, especially in schools like history. History last year, I think on top of Red, and is the #1 university, we're the #1 university in the UK for research excellence in the School of History. So to cut away from a sort of division and sort of school that has done quite significantly well at the university, and there is a financial award for the RAF as well. It seems an odd decision, and I'm somewhat inclined to agree with Miguel that perhaps it's been mismanaged and looked at as that the arts aren't as important. We'll get rid of those, even though they are financially and research-wise producing quite significant and excellent results.
Thank you, Ernest. If I can, to Maestro.
Hi. I would just also like to sort of pose the question as to just picture that it would happen to your course. You know, picture that this exact issue was reflected on any other course outside of arts and humanities, such as chems, such as natural sciences, etc. It seems that arts and humanities, not just at Kent, but also as an on national scale, has been attacked. You know, with the Parliament, I can't remember exactly who said it. Was it Rishi Sunak that said it a few years ago that he wants to get rid of, like, you know, unemployable degrees? You know, even here at our own university, there was a candidate that was up for the Parliament to be, I think it was president, that said he wanted to get rid of so-called Mickey Mouse degrees, which was all entirely arts and humanities based. Now, I personally don't think that's fair. I may be biased as I am myself a history student for a long term. This is my 4th year. But ask yourself, do you really think it's fair that it's constantly been arts and humanities when, you know, imagine if it was your own course? Do you think that your course has more value? Because I know when it's like my course, you know, I know that I was expecting a plethora of modules. And this year I had to pick from 5. We have no funding in my school, at the very least. We have very little communication. I don't think we should be having anything cut. I think there should be more love and care put into the arts and humanities to ensure that every student is supported just as they are with the biosciences, just as they are with chems.
Thank you for that, Matt. We can go to.
Yeah, just a few things. First, the fact that this has happened with arts and humanities is not an attack specifically on arts and humanities. The university does a review each year. We've got 6 divisions. We've only now moved from 3 faculties into 6 divisions. Turns out arts and humanities is the first subject of a revision and a restructure, but this might be the case next academic year. It might be chems, or it might be KBS that is seeing a restructure. So this is not solely an attack on arts and humanities. I think from having conversations with people in the division, it's not about necessarily around financial sustainability. I think it's more about, you know, arts and humanities is just simply not recruiting the numbers that makes it a sustainable kind of cohort of students. These students that want to study degrees like yours might be going to Russell Group universities because it's a degree, and my degree, the one that I did as well, doesn't have a clear career path to follow straight after, like medicine might have, or some other degrees, or like law, whatever it might be. So students will go to ultimately what is a higher profile institution to make sure that their chances of getting their dream jobs and their dream careers are as high as possible. Another note, my course got taught out. I was in NATS, I was in School of Sports. My course, if you Googled sport management throughout my 3rd year, it was not on the website. It was not available for students. This is happening in other places of the university. It's because my course had like 25 people in it, and it was just not viable. So I see that, but as a student that has gone through the course being closed down, I can tell you it was taught out. So my course didn't just disappear from one day to the next. My lecturers were still there. The same people that taught me in the 1st year were still there by my 3rd year, even though my degree was no longer available for new people to sign up for it. I still got all the support that I wanted, and I think that this is a really important point to make. degrees, courses, modules would not just disappear from one day to the other. Those students are already enrolled in those courses and those modules would continue to be taught out, and they'd be able to see towards the end of their degree and be able to graduate with the same degree that they applied for. From other discussions that I've had with the division as well, I'll give the example of religious studies, for example. Religious studies, one of the courses closed down, but it didn't disappear, and the director was very much adamant on telling me we don't want disciplines and areas of study to simply disappear. They will just be combined with something else or merged into something else, which I know is not exactly the experience that some students might sign up for, but it doesn't mean that they're left without support. It doesn't mean that they're not able to complete a degree and get a good quality education. I think that that's a very important point to make. And finally, I also wanted to say that certain things that, Miguel, that you've talked about are quite, they kind of clash with each other. So in one of the slides, you said the universities managed to break even last year, which is the first time that it's done so in a while because it's been losing money ultimately. And then the next bullet point was the university is highly profitable. How does that make sense? How can it just have broken even and be highly profitable? That is opposite. You're saying they've spent £100 and made £100, therefore they got zero profit. And at the same time, you're saying that they have really high profit. I think that we need to get a fuller picture and make sure that we're engaging in communication and in discussions with the people that are making these decisions at the university as well. And I understand it's quite a stressing topic, but I feel like sometimes, and again, it might be an issue of miscommunication, it might be an issue of partial information passed on to students or partial information being considered in these discussions, because, and I don't say this with any kind of bias or anything, but just like a students' union might have an agenda, the university might have an agenda, say, let's say make profit might be the university's agenda. UCU also has their own agenda, which is to mobilize people, and therefore they're going to use the information that seems the most kind of shocking to people, because that's what mobilizes people and that's what gets people having these discussions. However, I think it's really important to present the facts and make sure that we are engaging in discussions that are very crystal clear and know that they're not muddled.
We have about 4 minutes left on the intervene, so I'm going to do it quickly. I'm going to go just kind of like this. Yeah.
Mine was building on that point that it's obviously the university is a business, it's trying to make profit. So in the end, it's going to make cuts somewhere and someone has to bite with it. Like, it might not be that you want it to be the arts and humanities, it might be law, it might be something like that. No, I'm not saying that you want it, it could be anyone. It comes to a point where the university has to make a decision. It may say that this isn't the most profitable solution, so it will go with arts and humanity. But it's never a nice thing for your area to get the cuts, but someone may actually have to get the cuts in the end. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It may be a solution someone has to, as opposed to like.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. I am a film student, so I'm like directly affected by this. And this is something like, at least amongst us, that we've been noticing and also talking about since year one. And this is because like the way we feel about it is like, they're on like the page when you go on, there are so many modules and so many things that are basically told that they will be available for certain years that aren't, like just straight up aren't. Like every year we get the module list and we're always disappointed. So, and it, like the same thing with history, we pick between like 5-6 choices. And a lot of the times people come to Kent specifically for specific modules and then they're unavailable without without any warning. Like for one of my classmates specifically came to Kent because on the module list, there was so many TV modules. And then every year there's been none. And so for us, it's kind of, it almost feels like a betrayal. It feels like we're misled. And so for us now in third year, we kind of have to we kind of felt like we have to keep going, when in reality, the modules that we're getting are very disappointing.
Can I ask? I appreciate it. I'm quickly just going to go to Carolina.
I'd like to raise a procedural motion to extend the guillotine by 10 minutes.
Lovely. So a procedural motion is part of Canadian Parliament now. If you wanted to ever increase the guillotine time to talk more about a subject, you would raise a procedural motion to increase the guillotine time as Carolina did. Same thing with ballots and all of those things. So for the procedural motion to pass, we need to have 2/3 majority. Is that correct? Correct. So if you are in support of increasing the guillotine by 10 minutes, please raise your hand.
Sorry. I mean, that's a very clear majority. So normally it would be the proposal does like a quick thing, and then like if there was anyone against. But seeing as you all seem so keen to extend the guillotine. Can I just see the hands again? I think that's pretty much everyone, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
Perfect. I can go to James.
I'm just going to say that some of the sort of counterpoints seem a little bit, I don't know, they don't seem that coherent because I understand the sort of pragmatism of cutting courses, which, you know, maybe they're not as well attended as the university would like. It seems a bit strange they would then cut the department. It feels like you're sort of doubling on. It's almost kind of trying to short the department if you're trying to cut funding to a department which hasn't got enough bill coming onto it. Because surely they want to keep the humanities department. If they keep cutting funding to it, then surely they'll then have fewer and fewer students. It just seems like a bit reactionary move by the university. And again, it does seem a little bit reflective of the national mood to use the humanities as a bit of a punching bag when it comes to talks about sort of so-called Mickey Mouse degrees.
Thank you, Rajin. And I'm going to leave it.
Speaking of Mickey Mouse degrees, I study liberal arts, and we have been cut. I was the last year to do it. We're being taught out. No one told us this. That came completely through the grapevine. We were not consulted on it. No one spoke to us about it. Even the lecturers, I don't think, really knew about it. And liberal arts, the reason that I came to Kent really about it, other than personal circumstances, is that there's like, or when I looked, there was like 8 maybe universities that actually did liberal arts in the UK. It is very broad, which in a sense makes it niche. And it really was Kent's kind of variety of modules, like a lot of people have said, that brought me closer to that. So we're not actually, I'm not even arts and humanities and social sciences. But the thing is that we're just like little limpets. We stick on to every other degree's modules and we just show up to your modules. We only actually have 1 core module a year. So I don't, and they're with lecturers who already exist within politics and IR. So I don't actually think my course, I don't have the figures, but cost the university much. One thing I will say though about that is that, wait, I made a note of what I want to say, sorry. Yeah, what brought me to Kent was the options. There are now less options. I think that is, like you said, Lupe, this is going to be a wider restructuring. We are going to probably see more cuts. But I think the good question is, how much, there's a lack of transparency with the uni and their finances generally, I've noticed across like major things, and not just that, but also I feel like there's a lack of that they actually know what they're doing, in the sense that decisions don't seem to be made until the last moment. Especially with like modules and what's going to be available, which is why I think a lot of like course reading wasn't available over the summer. Like they didn't even have the lists out because no one knew if their modules were going to exist or not. This is seriously putting students at a disadvantage, not just who can't take the modules that they want, but want to get ahead on the reading because maybe they face barriers such as, like me, I have to be like in a space to read. But like you're a university, modules are the core of what you do. So if you are financially breaking even, unless you are absolutely in the red, why are you cutting courses? Why are you certainly not consulting students, even telling students that their courses and modules are getting cut? If that there is financial action that needs to be taken, then that should be the last resort, really. And if it is going to be done, then surely there they need to talk more to the union or to the general student body about that. Because right now, we're just talking about this, but we don't have the figures. We don't really have their plan of action. We're speculating because we know absolutely nothing what they're going to do.
Thank you for that, Lulu. I'm gonna, if you have a point, please. I think Louise can go first.
Sorry.
Just more of a question. Just because they're cutting out, are they going to be adding modules or taking away from other divisions? Because you said something earlier, but I wasn't, because I was trying to read some messages. But I just want to know, because I started my final year with a brand new module, and I was actually integrating master's students and undergraduate students, so it was more of a merge module, and it worked, because then it got the master's students integrating with undergrads, and we're not sure we want to do a master's third year or not. So could we possibly in the future merge some modules that are in the postgrad with final years? Because then you get more dissertation leaders, more postgrad.
Just really quickly on that, we all need to understand that the university has a lot of bureaucratic structures, as we know, that goes through a lot of levels of information being passed from the point at which a school is to then boards, meetings, going to directors, going to the deputy vice chancellors, going to the vice chancellor. Like these things are being passed up through a wide range of structures. So a lot of that information doesn't go up to students because it's first the staff that are dealing with it, and then that information goes to students. We don't even get involved until a point where they want to involve the union. But I'm going to go to Lupe and then very quickly respond to those points, and then go to Nicholas. You have a few minutes. Okay.
Actually, I'll let Ben go first.
Ben?
Biochemistry, okay, that's interesting. So I know in our science, the sort of hybrid module was done a lot before COVID. Generally, I've never heard of it done from undergrad to postgrad. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, they did for a while do the sort of second to third year and do mixed assessments, which is something perhaps, yeah, perhaps that's something we can poke in sort of meetings and things like that.
Yeah, so in terms of student consultation and how students are consulted on this, me and Zoe are going to be meeting with the Arts and Humps Divisional Director, the undergraduate role, to kind of discuss and really get everything really clear and out in the open, specifically for Arts and Humps, because this is the most kind of urgent division that we need to deal with essentially. And then another part of it is in terms of the university being transparent towards students and telling them how these decisions are made and kind of what consideration has gone into it. A lot of the times when the student just asks, why did this happen with my course? I will explain it to you. So for example, for me, I had actually, I was going to do an integrated master's in sport management. And then a month before my course was supposed to start, they told me, oh, it's cancelled. We're not running anymore. You're going to have to do an undergrad degree. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But why did it happen? And they explained to me a reason why, and it was very reasonable. And then I just, that's done and over it. They told me, we consulted with the students that had done the integrated master's. They said, I wish I would have done an undergrad and then a separate master's, and therefore they cut that course because how it was. But it was not until I asked them that they provided that information with, and I think what we need to really work on is the university to be more out and open around how they involve students in the decision making around this. Are there student panels that students can attend and provide the views in, and kind of also alumni as well. Like how was your degree? Did you? The university kind of goes out to students a year and a half after they graduate and asks them, do you have a graduate job? Have you started your career yet? And with that data, they can kind of understand what things at the university currently are happening and whether they're going to work for the current cohort of students and whether they'll be able to get graduate jobs as well. So there's a lot of things to be considering, but we'll be meeting really soon. If anyone has any feedback, please let me know, so we can relay that back to you.
I'm going to keep you updated on that too, for sure. It is obviously an ongoing discussion. We don't know what's happening by our meeting, so we can get that.
Yeah.
Back to Louise's point really quickly as well. Modules do come in and out massively because, as Lupe said, they review it on a year-to-year basis on what modules work and how they're changing. They do these reviews so it's continuously efficient and also providing the best possible education that they can. With obviously even lecturers leaving, if they don't have the lecturers to provide that module, they won't be able to provide it. Just quickly go over to Nicholas and then I think we'll be done.
Okay, so Yeah, I have the similar point about transparency. So was mentioned that you're unhappy about the fact that you have less subjects or modules available than expected. And I think the problem might be that the students wouldn't thought that this is something which could even happen, so they wouldn't ask. And I think that there's a general problem around transparency, and for the university, it's like an uncomfortable situation to share things. So I think this is something we can have an impact on, because transparency is something which is reasonable, and it's like very common in academic organizations or business organizations, and it's something realistic. So yeah, I think we can make some reasonable proposals and actually put pressure on the university to try to be more transparent. We need to be, I would say, patient, because it's like a very big organization and you need to put lots of effort to change things.
Thank you so much for that. That is the guillotine, so we are done with the discussion. Thank you so much, Miguel, for bringing this up as well. You're really nice session. The way you guys have gone through it is really important. It's what Parliament's about. If you do have any policy proposals around, obviously, like you said, transparency or anything, please do create that policy. You can get help from Dan as well on bringing back to Parliament. And that's all up to you guys, your Parliament members, your charge, right? So moving on swiftly to item number 6, which is discussion safety, student safety, and I'm going to call up on Yasmin to talk about this.
Do you want to talk about like the general issue?
You want to come up to the lecture. This I was like of 20 minutes. Let me know.
Sustainable bottles.
Huh?
No, the sustainable bottles. Wait, in plastic bottles. Of course, it's way better. Or is it just maybe that's something? It's more explanation. I don't want anyone to.
Okay. Well.
Like someone needs to speak for his needs.
So I'm specifically kind of here for one issue that I know was talked about during the safety on campus meeting that was held last week. I didn't get to attend, but I know Thomas talked about it. But basically, I believe 2 weeks ago now, there was a group of students, it was about like 10 p.m. and they were walking on campus near the Tyler Court area, the path that goes down into the hill. And they came up on a group of 3 children who were obviously underage and obviously drunk, who started to harass them. And they began to say very homophobic things towards specifically a member of their group who was the only man in the group and who, according to the other person who I was speaking to, said that they believed that the reason that this person was targeted was because of any sort of perceived queerness by those people. They tried to de-escalate the situation, tried to walk away. They thought that that group had left them alone. And so they went to leave campus and split up from that, from their male friend. And at that point, the group of people actually found that person and attacked him to the point that he had to go to the hospital and is off of school for a while. And during this, they tried to get campus security to assist them. And they felt that campus security was very unhelpful with the situation, only kind of telling them about the app and that next time they should use it. and that they couldn't do anything because they were no longer on campus and they were trying to get an ambulance, but they couldn't reach any, which is why they asked for campus security and tried to get their help, and they were of no use. And then I know a few days ago, Tom reached out to campus security.
Yeah, so I've reached out to them just so everyone's aware that this issue is dealt with, but I think really this kind of brings it in the sense we want to why we have to do safety, because he was very passionate about that issue that happened, and yes, the attack that's happening on queer students on campus. And really, we've had discussions at Kent Union, much wider about safety and things we can do to improve safety. For example, where can we put extra CCTV? How can we make campus safer? There is a group that kind of continuously is working on this, student-led group, but I think it's important to bring this here to a wider group of students for a kind of diverse perspective on this. Kind of any initiatives that you might think might be useful going forward, or kind of your concerns or areas that you think could be improved. I think we want to broaden it to talk about safety in general. This incident was raised and kind of shared because you got quite passionate about it as well.
Yeah, it was an issue that was brought to me when I asked if there was anything going on, and I heard that this issue had been talked about in the LGBT society group chat, which I'm not a part of. And I knew one of the people personally who was involved, and so she told me about it, and I felt I needed to share. And I'm obviously sharing this as the LGBT network chair, but also as like an overarching kind of problem, like Tom said, about safety on campus, which seems very, I like, this is kind of something I feel like we've been discussing for quite a while. Because I also remember a lot of talks about it last year. I feel like I remember a lot of talks about it even in my first year when I was locked away because COVID was at its height, and it was still an issue about Elliott footpath and these areas that people felt unsafe walking down or walking like at night. And the fact that now there was a group of underage drunk school children who were allowed to come on campus and then harass students at 10 p.m. It feels just, it's baffling. So I feel like this is a wide issue that really needs to be discussed. I'd like to open up just any thoughts.
Really, do you want to start off?
No, you can go first, you know them.
I can't initially think of anything that would be able to help that situation, because I think there's just the security and everything. It's terrible that happened. One thing I will say, as someone who lives slightly off campus and I have to walk down those paths, is that the majority of them are not well lit, and people have been saying that for the longest time. Even if you have an app, even if you call security people directly, like I've called them about not so urgent things before, they will amble over. But certainly lighting, I think, is something that could easily be fixed. That's a structural thing, like especially along the Keynes path that bleeds onto that one, as well as the one between, I can't think of the name, but yeah, along there, like there's just no lighting at all. And there were security guards along that for the first like week of term, and I don't think they're there anymore at all.
I like just adding on, I would completely agree, because walking down that path is terrifying. And if you know that entire area is vast, like it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge area, and there's multiple paths that go that area down by Keynes, Elliott footpaths, they all converge.
And it gets dark at like 4:30 p.m. now. Most of us are still in lectures. We don't have a choice but to walk home in the dark or catch a bus, which not everyone can afford, or whatever.
And by the time like winter hits, January, it starts getting, like I remember last year it was dark by like 33 o'clock.
Yeah.
And people have lectures.
Thank you so much, guys. Really important point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think especially now that it's getting colder and darker, it's a very important thing to start discussing really in depth. And there has been some work around lighting around Elliott footpath, which I think has made it slightly better, but it's still quite dark. And I walked down it. That was kind of scary. I was walking with my mum today and she was like, I can't believe you walked down here at night. Like, it's very scary. I think that, I guess I would like to ask if the support after this incident was, if the student reached out for support, and if that happened, I don't know if you have that information, but I think that's also a very crucial part of it, is how are we supporting students that, because of structural issues or because of how the university is set up already, are experiencing attacks or incidents where they might be harmed or might be made to feel really uncomfortable.
Well, I have not contacted the student who got attacked directly. This because the student who I knew, who reached out to me, says that student is actually quite traumatized by the event and they're still recovering from it, also physically, and that they themselves did not really want to cry, I guess. But right now, as far as I know that that student has taken time off of school. I do want to reach out to them when I get the chance, which soon. I know that the student that I was talking to is also contacted the union KMTV, I believe, to talk about or the
actual teaching.
KTV.
The student one.
I'm actually
So KMTV is the actual news network, TV.
Oh.
Probably KMTV.
Yeah, that was student media.
Yeah. To kind of talk about this event more as well. But yeah, in as far as direct support for that student, I don't know if they've reached out for it, and I will personally also talk to them when they feel up to it.
I think that that's such an important aspect of it as well, to make sure that they feel supported afterward as well, because it can be a really alienating thing to experience as well, because how many other people do you know that might have got attacked? You might not know anyone else that you can that fully relate to, that you might feel comfortable enough. So I think that having specialists and practitioners and clinicians helping out a student after an incident like this.
Thank you. To make use of reports voice, it's one of their students that when you report something, you get support on the other side. And just to say that actually it doesn't have to be an incident that happened yesterday, it could be a historical event, it could happen a month ago, you don't need to come to terms with it, and then you can report it. And so I just want to make that clear that, there is a lot of support around, perhaps on the end of this, I'll say that before.
Oh, I also just remembered this, sorry, but that student actually wants to remain completely anonymous. They from what I got from the person I was talking to, that's what they said. They also, for the most part, wish to remain anonymous, but that specific student who got tackled wants to also, in any discussion or anything, wants to remain anonymous.
They have the full rights to serve. That's the one we can take that. It was report the sport. You can report anonymously as well, which is really important. We know how traumatizing the situation can be. If I were to make sense.
I think a potential way to make walking ever so slightly safer, because obviously it's never going to eliminate that sort of horrible feeling that you worry that someone is literally behind you. I only knew this was happening during Freshers, the start of Freshers Week. At the top of Elliott Footpath and at the top of St Stephen's Hill, they were doing walking hubs, and I think it was run by the college community life team. So they were handing out personal alarms, torches, snap banners that you can see in car light, and it was just really good because it was stationed right at these paths which are notoriously sort of worrying to walk down, especially, I know it was mainly just to appeal to freshers and such, but just because Freshers is over doesn't mean that sort of weird, horrible threat goes away, and it's if anything, we now have more students, there will be more people walking, it is getting darker earlier, and I feel like these walking hubs are just sort of a really sort of nice way to sort of say look, there are people right up there, so God forbid if something does happen, there is someone very close by.
That's some great feedback. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, so this is something I'm hearing for the first time. And yeah, it's worrying. And when I'm like talking with my female friends, they say that they like feel unsafe on the campus, and I totally get it because it's like a large campus and the lighting isn't perfect and everything. The opportunity is probably wrong word to use, but if it's possible to ask university for some like safe audit, because like in the sense like what kind of areas are covered by like the CCTV, or what is lighting, what is the progress the university is going to do, and not just do it in some exercise just to be done, but actually do it. And I remember that last year we had like discussion about the CCTV and this kind of thing, and what I remember is the university was not really willing to do that. Maybe my memory is wrong. I don't want to blame anyone, but yeah, just really understand the situation and be done better. And second point, it's a tricky situation because if like students know about this but don't know who like was taken accountable, or what the university done about it, or what the security done about it, I think they would be worried even more. But in the same time, if you would release some press release, you would like cause panic. So is there some mechanism how to handle it in the right way? So like people won't live in fear, but in the same time you wouldn't do like even more damage.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think to clarify on those points, us as officers have met with campus security on multiple occasions to bring up points like this. As you may know, that Tom and me were on Respect and Know last year as well, alongside some of the people who are here today as well. And we care a lot about safety and student safety on campus. And when we were elected, we know that was elected for that purpose as well. We want to make sure this campus is as safe as possible. So every discussion we've had with campus security, we challenge them on their practices and how they're acting, what they're doing to support rather than to kind of protect themselves. There's CCTV specifically as well. We know CCTV, there's been a lot of investment in CCTV, so more CCTV cameras have been put up in Elgin and Parkwood Path, and there are more going to be put up, but that's why we're collecting data as well on where those CCTVs are needed the most. So we put those CCTVs up, but also lighting is a big thing. As you mentioned, that we need to make sure that paths are lit up. We will be talking to campus security continuously on the issue. It personally makes me really, really upset and angry as well. Especially being part of the queer community, knowing something like this happened on a campus where we're there, and it really does. It goes home. So, and I don't want anyone to feel that way ever have to deal with something like that. And that's something we will be fighting for. I can guarantee you that as an officer team, we do really care. If I can go to you,
Yeah, I just wanted to, and I'm looking at you guys for this. I don't know if we can set an action for all members. Do we set actions? Could we?
I mean, you can ask, essentially, you can ask people to go away, but it's not something that we would ever. I don't think it's.
I just would like this to be kind of like a standing item. I think that this deserves that time and deserves us coming back to it once we've had more of a, because like Nicholas has said, this might have been the first time that many of us have heard about this. Even myself, I've been working at the union, obviously there's certain topics that because of confidentiality, we don't get to hear until, so I hadn't heard about this particular incident either. And I think it's really important for all of us to take on the responsibility of an action point, to go away from this meeting, speak with our friends, speak with our network, speak with the students that we represent, and come up with a few ideas to bring back as a standing item for, I don't know, for the next meeting. I don't know what the agenda is looking like.
Maybe this can be part of Tom's update.
Yeah, and I guess there is a group actually dedicated to talking about this. It's safety on campus feedback group, and any student can get involved. And if you do want to, you can always message me. I can get you in touch with the right people to be on that group. It's a really productive group, and we have good conversation. I'll let everyone speak, and at the end, I'll just give you a bit more what I'm doing, because I think it's important to share.
I was gonna say, like about a week ago, I went on this thing for women walk, like in town, like and all, and they were just giving the whole talks about like what they're doing to make Canterbury, like not specifically the university, but Canterbury in general, like safer for girls and women. Like I know this happens to like a boy, but like just in general, like safety like for everyone is like a big thing to be like emphasize, especially on university grounds. And like not to well, basically, the police were just saying, like, especially towards any footpath, because they were asking me, like, especially, like, what do you think is, like, the most unsafe area? I was like, personally, I think any footpath is, like, the most dangerous area to walk by. Like, if I live on campus, I walk past it, like, every day. It's just one big square that's just completely black. Like, if someone ran at me, I would not be able to see them. I cannot see at all. And then they were just like, the only thing about any footpath is because these are such vast areas, they're hard to light up. And I was like, okay, like, they were just saying that they're trying to do more, but as far as they know, that they've done most of what they can do in terms of like lighting and like safety around that. I know like around there, they have people like patrolling, like especially at night. They have people walking just to make sure anybody who's walking is safe. But there always is people around. There's meant to be anyway. But then I'm saying if we're like, I don't know if you want campus security to actually work with the police. I don't know if the police are useful around Kent. Like I've never called them. I'm gonna have to depend on them. I don't know if they're actually like, are they good, are they bad, do they listen, do they not listen? But on this walk, especially, they seem very like adamant on making Canterbury a safer place. So maybe if you call them and was just like, this happened, I don't know if you want to report, like I don't know, maybe anonymous, they might not want to report it if they don't want a big deal. Like that's fair enough, that's totally fine. But if they called and just even trained campus security on how to like act in a situation like this, like, or like just in general. But like I wanted to ask a question, but not like an offensive question. Like I'm not trying to like make the situation like bad. But see the way these people don't go to any, like they're underage, they're drinking, they just happen to be on campus. Like, what do you want like them to do? If that makes sense. Because like they don't go to the scene, like their kids or something. Like it's like they don't go to this game. There's no like security, not security, but there's no like gates. Like you don't have to like swipe your card to get on something. You just walk on. You can walk anywhere because you go to campus, as most universities are. But like seeing where you call the campus security and you wanted them to like do anything essentially. Like did you want them to like actually catch these children, or would you like?
Well, I feel like that's very unlikely to happen. I feel like it's more at the time of what happened. Chemistry is basically unavailable for these people, and also the fact that because the uni is open, it's huge, and people can walk on freely. That's completely fine. But I feel like it was the fact that one, the harassment was able to take place for so long, and then to the point where they were falling out with campus without security being around or available or being able to see what was happening at all.
Okay, but they didn't contact security, right?
They contact security afterwards, but it's so late at night and these people were on campus, and I feel like it kind of ties back to like Elliot Kopak CCTV. We could talk about having stuff like this, but if an attack happens, it happens. So how do we prevent it?
Thank you for that point. I think a really important discussion, and this is something we should be discussing at every parliament. Unfortunately, we have reached the guillotine for this item, so I won't be taking any more points on this. But if you have anything to add, please do bring them to Dom or any of the office team really, and we can feed it back to them. And if you want to be involved with the campus or safety on campus group, then please do let Tom know as well. Just in terms of firstly support services as well, I think it's really important to point out that report and support is something that, Kent Union and Respect the Knowers work with the university on as well, to ensure that it's something that people can use effectively, whether it be anonymously or, actually putting in your details. And if it is against someone who is still at the university, they take it really seriously and they will follow up. And also that provides you the support from SSW that you may need. And I would, if any of your friends or anyone has gone through something like this, please refer them to our advice service or to SSW. Just give them the email. All this information is available on our website as well, and on our Instagram as well, just so they have that access and that they can get the support that they need, because we know how traumatic things like this can be. and that emotional support is really important. Beyond that, I'm gonna talk quickly also explain some of the stuff we do.
Yeah, I think it's really important to end this conversation, having said some stuff that's actually going on to really offer you some reassurance. Well, I guess I've been meeting with at least a lot, having these conversations, and recently Canterbury run a bid, Safer Streets 4 bid, for some funding to run a Safe Night Out campaign across the whole of Canterbury, and there's a large pot of money to have a dedicated campaign around this and a whole Canterbury initiative. And as part of that, we're looking at messaging and ways we can kind of, I guess, increase lighting around Canterbury as well, but also things like sort of more tangible things such as reviewing the connected routes. This week at Union Safety Week, we've been trying to put out a lot of messaging around safety and the initiatives that we have existing, the refuge points that you can visit if you ever feel unsafe. And I feel like I'll be doing a review of that as well to see whether these lit routes that we're promoting are actually still safe as well. A couple of weeks' time, I'm going on the nighttime safety walk to review the CCTV and lighting around campus. And I'm actually looking to involve students in that process. I think it's really important. So, if you're interested in getting involved with that, then please do. And I can definitely get involved with that. There are many ways that I am talking to campus security every month, whenever really I need to reassure and to kind of tackle these issues. The first annual report will be out soon, and it will identify the areas in which there are higher cases. Perhaps we're facing more issues around racism, and that can help us kind of tailor a campaign around that. And just been in interviews today for a specialist wellbeing advisor for the bullying, discrimination and hate incidences, and that person in post will then focus on the other side, which is not sexual misconduct, but all the other kind of harassment that happens. And we'll be working on a campaign similar to the Consent Get It campaign, but around kind of discrimination and kind of building tolerance and tackling and kind of pushing out that intolerance that we have that lingers around campus. Well, I'm sure there's a few other things.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Alex, for bringing this up as well. Really good beginning.
Just to quickly point out as well, we go on a lot about the Safe Zone app, and you probably have heard about it a bit too much sometimes. But I'm telling you, if you go on Instagram, you want to get up to it. That Safe Zone app genuinely works. If you ever feel like you're in danger anywhere on campus, please download it, press that emergency button. Campus security will show up in literally 2 minutes. Like it is, if their entire room beeps with alarms, we actually visited their entire security room beeps with alarms until they go and visit it and check it out. So you know it works.
All the phones get alerted to everyone. Security gets an alert, and then your live location is kind of shared with you about that, so they know where exactly you are. They can put a camera kind of where you are to know what's happening right in that moment. And I feel like, I guess, we were quite reassured with that whole process, and just to share that.
Sorry, yes. I'm just curious, do you know how many downloads it has or how many students may know?
We don't have that information, unfortunately. We kind of asked them for everything.
I think I actually have, and the problem is it is a kind of wide thing. Other places have a safe zone now. It's really difficult kind of to know how many university connections, but certainly something I can ask you again.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having some really amazing discussions, for being really involved and really kind of getting your voice heard. Now we have 2 more items really quickly. So obviously we have item number 7, which is member communicating officer updates. Now we don't have time for a full officer update, but the officer team has been working really closely. I'm sure you've been seeing as well if you follow our social media on some of the work that we've been working on. We will be releasing updates as well in picture format and in video/podcast format soon as well, and we'll have scrutiny panels at some point as well this term. So you can attend those as well and see our updates on that. The big update that I did want to bring to you guys as well to your attention is that there's an article that's gone up on our website now, and it is about a discussion from going from 5 officers to 4. Now, that would mean the removal of the VP postgraduate experience. And there is basically, I'll read you out the whole kind of thing really quickly, just so.
That's not good for next year.
Not for next year. No, we're not firing Ben, I promise you. I do want to make that very clear. No one's trying to fire Ben.
Hashtag win Ben.
We love Ben. I think we're a great team, but this is more of a discussion for next year, so that if we make this decision by at the end of this term, we can then run the elections effectively in March, and not have to run elections for the VP role as well. That's kind of the reason we're doing it now. So I came to your parliament on the 22nd of November, so that'll be the next session. There's a proposal about whether we would have 5 officers or reduce 5 officer team to 4. And the proposal is being put forward to remove the vice president of postgraduate experience role. Deputy Parliament has the power to remove and change roles from the bylaws. However, this change will not come into effect until the new academic year. So this academic year would remain as the final officer team. Now, this proposal will make the whole officer team responsible and accountable to both undergraduate students and postgraduate students. So it wouldn't take responsibility kind of away from the other 4 officers by putting it onto one officer would mean that all 4 of the officers would be liable and responsible for postgraduate experience as well. So creating further opportunities to cross-collaborate on campaigns and activities for postgraduate. The proposal looks to reallocate the roles and responsibilities of that VPPG role across other 4 offices. Before this is decided, we are consulting with postgraduate students to gather their thoughts and their views on the change. In the next couple of weeks, basically the officer team, all 5 of us, will be meeting with different groups of postgraduate students, all the way from our postgraduate network, as well as our postgraduate open places, but then also postgraduate students in different divisions, RLAs from CCL, Brussels and Paris as well, who are quite a lot of postgraduate and midway postgraduate students as well. Now, we'll be meeting with different stakeholders to ensure we capture as many views as possible, and we'll be hosting an open forum as well for postgraduate students to give us their feedback. This forum will be hosted online and you can join on Teams on the 10th of November from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. This information is all available on the website as well, so you can look at it. And if you have any concerns or would like to talk to someone about this, please email us at Kent Union as well. Just a brief rationale is that the reason we're having this discussion isn't because we don't want Ben in our team. We feel like Ben is part of our team, but by having a role that is specific to postgraduates, it makes sole responsibility and accountability belong to one role. This role often works with other officers on issues that relate to postgraduate experience due to the nature of the other roles. So all the other roles are basically more wider issue like welfare and community, student engagement, academic experience. They're like wider things, whereas the postgraduate experience role focuses specifically on just postgraduate students. And as I said, it may sometimes take like the responsibility away from the other 4 officers to be dealing with postgraduate issues when we are elected to represent all students, not just undergraduate students. So currently there are over 2,000 postgraduate students at the University of Kent, which make up approximately about 15% of all students. And that is disproportionate to kind of the other roles as well. So the other roles, if you think just focus on undergrads, they're focusing on 85% of the roles of students. But that shouldn't be the case. So you're focusing on 100% of students, every single student at the University of Kent. That is why we are sabbatical officers. Do we get some thoughts from people? Yeah, absolutely. We do have some time. So if you guys have any thoughts right now or something that you'd like us to go on, please let me know.
I could argue that, yeah, because this was a discussion that was going on when I was an undergrad here in 2018, which was the year they kind of introduced the role of the postgrad officer, which is to specifically look at representing postgrad students more effectively. But at that time, as far as I can remember, postgrad students, because I was heavily involved in I was not a postgrad at the time, were against it because exactly what you said, it shouldn't be allocated to a single person. So it just feels like we're kind of redoing this cycle again, and it's really frustrating for, we just had a meeting with postgrad network today, and it's really frustrating that as postgrad we're kind of just like shocked. I had no idea this was happening until like just today, and it just feels like We're not really.
We're not ready for that, honestly.
I completely understand that view because that's what we heard as well. Obviously, we're kind of a new team when we came into this and when we heard about what the postgrad experience role had its kind of critics back then, but it was still implemented through Canadian Parliament through the changes. That's why we've been having discussion on the team over summer and we didn't want to bring anything to students until it was like, we're, actually looking to make this change and actually consult people and get a vote. We won't be making the decision by ourselves. It can't be in Parliament that's deciding, so it's you guys who decide at the end of the day. And the only reason is on that basis that we want to make sure that every officer is responsible for every single student, and including postgraduates, undergraduates as well. But I completely get your views and we will be having consultation with you guys as well to make sure that we get your views heard. I do want to also quickly point out that part of this rationale in 1 second. Yeah, so there will be other forms of representation. So it's not like we're taking postgraduate representation away completely. The postgraduate network is there for that reason as well, and postgraduate open places alongside other representation structures within our PG reps that we have in our student rep system. And we have specific dedicated members of staff that will be looking after PG representation. In terms of full representation and like university level, the SAB, the whole team will be responsible for that representation as well, regardless of whether we continue to have a lead media role or not. That is will be no for.
I think I thought we will be having that discussion in the next Parliament so that we are all prepared, because my question will be specific, like you're talking about a structure that will be put in place to support the postgraduate. What is that kind of structure that you have? And then second one will be this role, I am sure, was created because there was a gap in terms of representation of postgraduate. So what is it that is making you now think that the sabbatical officers, and I appreciate they're doing a great job, and when they speak, I don't see like Lupe saying this is postgraduate and this is and she just does the whole thing, which is a good thing. But before that role was created, then there must have been a gap that was felt, and I think it's still there because even this, I think I can't put my fingers to which department, but right now there's a fund that the university is trying to put out. I think it's £1,500 for ideas on how to create a community for postgraduate students. So it just shows that there's a gap already, and not you, like us taking out that particular representation in terms of the Kent Union.
I completely.
For me, it doesn't add up. So I really need to see what are we saying? What are we saying? What is it that we are going to miss as postgraduate, and what are you bringing to the table to support us? I don't know if it makes sense, but I feel like there's something that is not very clear for me to say yes or no to this.
I completely get that. So this will be coming to obviously next Parliament with a structured plan of what we'll be doing, how we'll be going about it, and what will be kind of doing that. I just do want to point out that you still feel that gap now, and that is kind of showing that the BPPG role hasn't been effective in those 4 years that it's been around completely. I know COVID does have a part to play in it. It's a massive thing, but that is kind of,
And what we're saying, the DPG role, we're not talking about specific people, we're just talking about the role in the structure and the team. I guess maybe I need to speak with the chair before I make this comment. Okay, cool. No, that's right. It's just more about like what you're talking about, like what I'm guessing you speaking in terms of resources, in terms of the people, the staff that are going to be doing the bits of work that this role might do in terms of supporting the other officers to be able to fully represent and support and listen to and engage with postgrad students. Like Karina mentioned earlier, we are all paid. We all earn a salary for the roles that we do. And obviously with one role going away, there is usually some financial savings, and this is a completely other part of the discussion as well that I'm not going to get into until we have the full discussion, because I don't know if I'm allowed to. But there is alternatives, and it doesn't mean that it would just be, it would just disappear completely from the plate. Yeah,
they still will have that representation.
Exactly, and things will get put in place to make sure that we could. But in the case that it did, things would get put in place to make sure that certain key aspects, especially like operational engagement aspects, communication aspects, student reps, all that kind of stuff in terms of specifically postgrad is still covered. And that's a really important kind of.
I want to make it clear, we in no way ever want to disadvantage PG students and their representation. That is really important to us, and it is important because you guys make up our student membership as well. And all we are wanting to do is streamline the representation structure and make sure that we can fill those gaps that you discussed to be able to actually make it more efficient, make it more easy for postgraduate students to go out. I can go to Lulu first. And then,
Quickly, I was just going to say that obviously I'm not a postgrad, so I appreciate you'll be consulted with them. But one thing that I do know is that normally when roles like that are created, and maybe initially, it was more because it's like in cabinet in our government, you have a women's and minorities minister because they're underrepresented. And although like you said, I think postgrads make up 15%, although the current cohort of officers we have is, when you talk, you're always very, as you say, inclusive of postgrad, and we've never stated you weren't. Like obviously if Ben's leaving next year, and then I don't know if you guys are staying or leaving next year, we'll see how the elections go. Basically, like if the role is no longer there, it seems that there may be the possibility that future officers may not be so balanced, and there is a gap created by which secretary tyranny is the majority.
that is something we have thought about massively, but it does, we want to point out on BCom is also a postgrad student in the role as VP welfare community, but by putting it within your officer contract and your, the rules and regulations of people abiding by officers, that is something you are held accountable for. If you are not doing that, then you are no longer actually viable in your role because you aren't representing all students. If we do remove the VPPG role and put that responsibility within all 4 officers, then they will be held accountable to that by student membership. You have the power to make sure that your officers are doing what they say they should be doing, and representing the students should be. I'm going to vent quickly.
It's just kind of a side note, by the way. I'm remaining fairly silent on this, as you may have gathered, and that's because for this particular discussion, I'm going to take a relatively neutral stance because of reason, and as well as my own sort of personal investment in the role. I don't want to influence decision making. So whilst I'm in all the consultations and will be reaching out to everyone, I just want to clarify that my silence here isn't a sense, either a sense of anger or happiness towards this decision. It's just kind of a remaining relatively on the sidelines.
Thank you. How are you going to go?
Yeah, no, but I was going to say, like, I'm sorry, I keep bringing it back to the past, but like, that's the whole thing. When 4 years ago, as a student here, there were 5 roles, and the whole point was to have the postgrad kind of experience is looked at by all 5 of them, and they couldn't do it. And I know that the team is different, obviously, but I'm just saying, if they couldn't do it 5, I don't see how they could do it 4, personally. Obviously, I want to listen more and hear more of the students say, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you for that point, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate a few things. The first one around what you said around that being built into officers' contracts and kind of, we have a set of responsibilities and set of areas, set of things that we must achieve in our roles as officers in order to be effective representatives. And if that's included, then you've got no option but to do those things. And same thing, like Seth was saying, we don't have line managers. No one is our boss at the organisation. We hold each other accountable as a team of officers. And we are ultimately held accountable by students. So it's by student media and asking us in screening panels, what are you doing for postgrad students? That is really important kind of place to put pressure on to ensure that the representation is as effective and as accurate and as widespread as possible. But also it's here at Parliament, and it's basically everywhere that you see an officer where you can hold them accountable. Also, not to mention board of trustees that all of us officers sit on. So we're all trustees of the organisation, and we all want to make sure that the organisation is financially, reputationally viable and sound. And part of that is making sure that the representatives that are heading the organisation are actually representative. So we don't only just update to you guys, but we also update to all of the directors and trustees of Kent Union about what we're doing, and they also hold us accountable and ask us what we're doing. And their sole role and purpose is to kind of not find the mistakes and find the bad things, but to be really critical about what we do. So I guess it's about being vocal and being, you know, willing to hold us accountable, which ultimately, you know, you guys are our bosses. Like no one else is going to tell us what to do, or how we're doing, or whatever it might be. Like it's ultimately you.
100%. And that's a really good point, because at the end of the day, PG representation is an issue, and we recognize that. You know, since my time here from 2018, I've seen that as well, because I've had multiple PG friends from my first year who face that issue of not knowing who to go to speak to, or like where to go. That's why I want to make it really, really clear that we do really care about PGs, and we want to make sure we work with you guys. That's why we had the PG network, you know, goes into the network system, because it's so important for that representation. You know, our PG network chairs have been so effective in representation for the past few years as well. On top of that as well, like, as you guys said, in those contracts, if you don't follow that, then you are responsible, you can, you know, have a vote of no confidence, you can be kicked out, you can be held in a disciplinary because you're not doing what your job is, and that's really important. As Miguel said as well, in 2018, when this role was created, that decision was also made as like with students, but I was combining the VP activities role and VP sports role to a VP student engagement, but that those two roles separated groups into sports groups and all other student groups, right? Whereas this one role encompasses every single student group, regardless of whether you're an undergraduate or postgraduate student, you are in, you know, if you're part of those groups, the VP student engagement with after you. That's kind of what we are focusing on as an organization, but just as an officer team, feel like it would make a lot of sense to streamline it, because a lot of unions have 4 officers and they work effectively at representing the students. But we will bring you all these facts and figures in the parliament meeting with the paper, with the policy proposal that we can discuss on properly, and with all the consultation as well. But I'm going to move on from this, and hopefully this has kind of started some thinking in you guys' mind. If you have anything you want to add or say, please do come to any of us. We'd be happy to have a conversation, discuss your points. That we're so open to hearing all this feedback before we make a policy proposal. Yeah.
And if you've got any PG friends,
send them our way.
Yeah, send them our way, let them know that this might be happening and make sure that they get involved.
Just as a final point, if this proposal doesn't go through, then obviously it's a matter of having the ballot. If it does go through, for the sort of main primary goal, I suppose, of my role this year will be instead to sort of making sure that this is a feasible situation for next year, making sure that consulting, especially with the network and everyone else, make sure that we, as postgraduates and as the sort of representing body of postgraduates, move forward in a manner that's going to give the most effective support. But obviously that is just to clarify, moving forward, if this proposal does go through in the future, then we will be working together and get a lot more of the table. How can we make this as possible?
Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Is there any other business that anyone wants to bring up?
Mine is just to wrap it up a little bit on that. I just feel like when you've been on the inside of the Kent Union, and I would just ask on a goodwill thing that you give us a scenario where we can have conflict of interest between postgraduate and undergraduates in terms of representation. I don't know if that makes sense to you. When, for example, when you go to the Senate and you're representing both postgraduate and undergraduate, is there a sense of conflict of interest that you're representing the majority or you're representing the minority? I know they may not be a realistic example that I have, but
is there times where representing undergraduates do think about it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So there are
not now, because we have other points. So like, think about it. Let us know, because it will help us also just make a decision.
We'll
Thank you so much, Maureen. Thank you. So if there's no other business,
Hi, sorry. It was just a sort of potential proposal, maybe. Basically, I spoke to a few of my fellow students and some of my friends who are there. They're being really badly hit with the cost of living crisis. You know, they are aware of the campus pantry and whatnot, but the thing that they have found that is sort of the most sort of detrimental to them is the sort of inability to be able to buy food on campus, like from outlets, because it's just so expensive. Like, you know, obviously they could bring lunches with them, but sometimes that isn't always a viable option because they just don't have time. If people want a hot lunch, there aren't very many places that are available to reheat these kinds of types of foods. And it was asked if there was any possibility of maybe being able to ask for food vouchers to be put on Kent One cards.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm so glad. Because there is a lot of work and there's a lot of feedback that we have received and a lot of work that I've been doing on with the hospitality team. So from Monday next week, Rutherford will be serving £3 hot meals for lunch and dinner every day of the week. And we are hoping to put on like a breakfast club of sorts. So like every Monday we'd give out like free breakfast. So we're trying to work on that as well to alleviate those cost pressures from food prices specifically. If you do ever need any help with, you know, buying food, if you go to the advice service, they can also refer you to CCL who put money onto your Kent One card to be able to buy those specific things as well. And you can use that Kent One credit in co-op as well to buy groceries. There's a lot of work we're doing on that. I'll keep you updated on that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
There, what's the one out of we are running 4 minutes over. Go on.
Just very quickly, there'll be a survey about cost of living. Now, kind of gauge how much it's impacting you, but really for clear ways in which we can then take action on that. So that we can have.
Right. Thank you, Tom. In fact, thank you for everyone for engaging, and Matt, thank you for the survey for coming in. You know, really informing us, so really appreciate it. And I will see you guys all next meeting, 22nd of November, back here again with this beautiful lecture and this beautiful layout. And so I'll see you then. Bye guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to. Thank you very much. Very enjoyable. That was my last week.
I'll be okay.